So I know how you guys just love my stories, and here I am on a little adventure, and this one just happens to be true. My parents were coming to visit, and they had decided to rent a car so that we can go together and explore Costa Rica. So it's a little road trip that we took, and off we went. Now, typically my dad drives and my mom sits in the front seat a little scared with our GPS, and I always am back with the map because I just don't trust those GPS machines, and today we found out why. So we were on a little car and we're going over to a volcano to go visit. We had to go through the city and over a bridge. Should have been a pretty easy ride. But while we were going, the GPS said turn left and there was no bridge where it said to turn left. Surprise, surprise. Well, I guess that's how it goes in Costa Rica. We had a big rain, the bridge broke, people had to do some construction work, and we got turned around off our route, and then we had to find another way to get to the top of the mountain. So, while we were traveling around, the question is, do we ever make it to the top of the volcano? And how do we find out just how far we traveled? Alright, so before trying to solve this problem, let's go ahead and take some notes on chapter 5.8 and 5.9 on fractional equations. Now, what do we mean by this? We're going to be solving equations with fractions in them. So here are the steps. Step 1, find the LCD, the least common denominator, and make sure that you factor if needed. Step number 2, we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the least common denominator, the LCD. And then step number 3, we want to solve for x for the variable in our equation. We might have to combine like terms or factor. Then the last step is step number 4, is we always want to check our solution for any excluded values and make sure it's correct. Think about domain. So let's go ahead and check all those out and work on example number 1. So on example number 1, we have 2x over 5 equals 4 over 3. Now our first step is look for that least common denominator, the LCD. And in this case, it's going to be 15. 5 times 3. We're going to multiply both sides by 15. Now that we have the 15, we're going to distribute it between both sides of the equation. So you have 15 times 2x over 5, and that changes to 3 over 1, and 15 times 4 thirds, and that changes to 5 over 1. Now, once those things are canceled out, you could rewrite it as 3 times 2 to the x equals 5 times 4. So now, we're going to combine like terms. We have 6x equals 20. Divide both sides by 6, and we're going to get x equals 20 over 6, or 10 thirds. Now, step number 4, we want to double check to make sure it still works in our equation, and it does. So we are good to go. Now some of you might be thinking, oh wait, Mr. M, that looks like equivalent fractions, and can't I use a different method to solve this? I'm going to say like, yes, I think you can, but only for fractions that are equal to each other. So now we could use cross multiplication. So 5 times 4 is 20, and 2x times 3 is 6 to the x, and now we could just solve for x, and we get the same solution that we got before. So yes, you can use cross multiplication, but only if the fractions are equal to each other. All right, so now example number 2. Example 2 starts off with x over 6 minus the quantity of x minus 1 over 2 less than or equal to 7/12. Now the first thing you'll notice is that we are subtracting a fraction, so we want to convert that into an addition problem by distributing the -1. Next, we're going to be looking for the LCD. In this case, it's going to be 12. You have 6 times 2, and then 12 is going to be our denominator that we're going to use. We're going to multiply that 12 by each of the fractions, so 12 times each of those individual terms. And once we do that, we can start canceling them out. So 12 over 6 is going to be reduced to 2 over 1. 12 over 2 is going to be changed to 6 over 1. And 12 over 12 is 1. So now let's go ahead and rewrite that. It's going to be 2x plus negative 6x plus 6 is less than or equal to 7. Now we're going to combine like terms. We have a negative 4x and then subtract the 6 from both sides. We get negative 4x is less than or equal to 1. Divide both sides by negative 4. Then we get x is greater than negative 1/4. So if you spotted there, we switch the signs because when we divide by a negative, we have to switch the inequality. So now we have x is greater than negative 4. The last thing we want to do is just double check to make sure it works in the equation, and there should be no problems, so we're good to go. On to the next, example number 3. So for example number 3, we have b over the quantity b plus 1 plus b over the quantity b minus 2 all equal to 2. Looking for that LCD, we're going to have to multiply b plus 1 and b minus 2. Multiply that by both sides of the equation here in step number 2. And when you do, you get b minus 2 times b plus b plus 1 times b. And that equals our whole LCD times 2. Now remember, if you have any questions, you could always pause the video and take a look at the details or ask me a question in the comment box and I'll get back to you. So now we're on step number 3 where we're distributing all the values, and here we're going to be using a box to multiply these two binomials together. And now we are ready to combine all the like terms. So we're going to distribute the 2 on the right hand side and put all of the like terms together on the left hand side. And now we're going to subtract the values on the right hand side to move them over to the left. We are trying to get the whole equation equal to 0. Here we're able to cancel out the b squareds. We're left with b plus 4 equals 0. Move the 4 over and we have b equals negative 4. Now checking to make sure it works in our equation. And it does. We are still good to go. So let me give you one more example and then you could try some on your own. So example number 4. The LCD is going to be t plus 2 times t minus 1. And then we're going to multiply that LCD times both sides of the equation, and we're going to have those binomials cancel out. And you're going to get t plus 2 times the quantity t minus 1, and that equals 3. Now once we distribute and then we combine like terms, we're going to get 3t equals 3 and t equals 1. We should be good to go, but when we do our double check, we're going to see that 1 does not work because 1 minus 1 is 0 and we can't have 0 in the denominator, so that means that we have no solutions for this problem. The t minus 1 just won't work for us. So always double check your solution with the original equation. So now, as promised, we are going to have some examples for you to do on your own. It's going to be fun. So here is example number 5. We have 3 over c minus 4, and it's equal to 1 over c minus 2. Now, for example number 6, we're going to be looking at 3 plus 5 over x minus 2 equal to the quantity 3x plus 1 over x. And we get c equals 1. Now you can see that you could either multiply the LCD or you can cross multiply in this case because we have equivalent fractions. In example number 6, we did the same thing again. We multiplied by the LCD, which is x minus 2 and x. Multiply those by all the fractions there, distributed it out, you notice that we also had to use box, and we get a final result of x equals negative 1/2. Alrighty, so right now, if you need more time to review these solutions, it is a good time to pause. Otherwise, if you have any questions, just go ahead and send me an email or write in the comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But for now, you should be ready to solve fractional equations. So I know some of you are dying to find out what happened on my little road trip story. Well, just as a reminder, there was a broken bridge, so we had to go all the way around, and eventually we had to stop at a gas station to find out where exactly we were. And my mom had to ask in Spanish how to get to the volcano. This is when we found out it was only 5 kilometers away from the gas station, so again we were off on the road, up a windy road up the mountain, which meant we had to slow down quite a bit on our journey, but eventually we did get there. Now if you divide the trip into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2, we could start looking at this as a word problem. Yay! So if my trip took about 1.5 hours to complete, and the first part of the trip we were traveling at 60 kilometers per hour, and in the second part of the trip we had an average of 20 kilometers per hour and a total of 5 kilometers long for the second part. How many kilometers was the first part of the trip, and what is the total distance that we traveled? So just like any other word problems that we worked on, the first thing I want you to do is try to find out what is given in the problem. So looking at this problem, we can see that first we have 1.5 hours, so that's going to be the total time. And then looking at the first part of the trip, we have 60 kilometers per hour as our average speed. And then looking at the second part of the trip, we are given 20 kilometers per hour and a distance of 5K. So we're going to write those two down. Next, we're going to try to find out what we want to find. And we are asked to find 2 things, the kilometers for the first part of the trip, and we're also asked to find out the total distance traveled. So what else do we know about the problem? We already know that speed equals distance over time, and we could convert that also to time equals distance over speed. So we have all the information we need. Now we could start looking at solving the problem. So I'm going to use times as the example. So time of part 1 plus time of part 2 equals the total time. And I'm going to convert those to distance over speed because I already know what the distance and speeds are. I can now substitute the values in, and I should have an equation that looks familiar. It's an equation with fractions. So now I could use the LCD to solve this. Multiply the LCD times both sides, and I'm going to get those values to cancel out. I redistribute. And now I'm going to get d equals 75 kilometers. Now that's the first part of the trip. I still need to find the total. So first part of the trip plus the second part, 75 plus 5 equals 80 kilometers. So now that's the total distance. And we have solved our problem. So yes, eventually we did make it to the top of that volcano. It was Volcano, and it was quite a sight from the top. Check it out. Congratulations, you survived fractional equations and made it to the top. Just a few safety tips before you decide to visit one of our volcanic parks. Please enjoy yourself, but be aware of the signs and check it out for volcanic activity. If you notice something, follow the arrows and run for safety. Again, do not be caught unawares. Make sure you are aware of your safety and run cover when necessary. Thank you, and have a nice day.